All right. Do you guys want to get started? Cool. So thanks everyone for joining us. This is our digital zine workshop. We're really excited to have all of you here. We're going to start off doing a short presentation, and then we'll be dividing up into groups to do the workshop portion. So I'm Christina Damshin-Spina with Indo, and wanted to first give a few housekeeping items. So please mute when you're not speaking. We are going to be recording the presentation section. So if you don't want to be recorded, just turn your camera off during this section, and I'll turn it off when we're breaking into groups. If you have any questions while we're going along, feel free to use the chat. And we're excited to be working with you. This is something that we want your participation in. So to give you a brief introduction on what DIY publishing is, here in Portland, we were really inspired by all these creatives that work on DIY publishing and zines specifically. This is a great quote from Broken Pencil magazine, and it talks about zine really being this true form of democracy, right? And it's something where you can have full creative expression. You don't have to be constricted by a publisher or trying to scale. It can be something that you just experiment with to try and reframe a new perspective. So we're here to be creative, to try and push new boundaries. And to get you inspired, I'm giving you some zine titles that really brightened our day. So first is Honing Your Craft, Developing Your Writing Skills on a Budget. So zines can be educational and teach you something. Here's one, Calvin and Hobbes' Guide to Daily Life. So social commentary, taking something that's existing, that's commonly known, maybe in pop culture or maybe even within historic preservation, and adding your own perspective to it. The Houses We Grew Up In, someone who drew pictures of her home and told stories about her experience in living there. This is not someone in preservation specifically, but they really talked about the history of the space. So this is creating, I think, a more inclusive communication and dialogue to people who aren't necessarily within the industry. And then I love this one, of course, because it involves the windows, but it's called Inside. So it just has all these different window templates, and it invites you to color scenes that are happening inside the building. So this play on interior and exterior space. I also want to call out, if you want more inspiration, all of these publishers are wonderful. They definitely are in need of support during these times, and it gives you some wonderful reading. And so for that reason, we have a special prize going on right now. Indo is going to give away Quarantines. That's 20 zines, an $80 value, which will be supporting publishers and artists from Portland. And all you have to do is submit to our window zine by May 31st. So here's the URL that has the prompt for writing. But all you have to do is submit on our online form by that date, and you'll be automatically entered in the raffle for this great prize. And here's some information about the zine. Our prompt is Their History, Our Lives, tying old spaces with our modern lives. So if the windows could talk, what pivotal or private moments have they witnessed through the years? Whose hands place themselves where yours rest now? How has the landscape changed? And so we really invite you to tell a personal story, do something like writing commentary, even taking your experience through the workshop here today and submitting that with the context of this prompt. If you have any ideas or you want to talk through your ideas or edit material, Catherine, who is in this webinar, there she is here to help. She is a wonderful writer, so here to just talk with ideas with you or to edit anything. So please make sure to reach out to us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to get our workshop kicked off today.
Hey everybody, I'm Sarah Marcin. I'm a heritage resource consultant based in Columbus, Ohio, and I got connected to Indo 4 years ago or so because I've done a lot of work trying to empower communities to have a voice. So this is going to be Indo Zine, and I'm really keep trying to expand it to ensure that all types of preservationists have an ability to get their voice out there, because not everybody can get published in a formal book because that's very academic and boring. So zines are a great opportunity to find new ways to tell stories of the past. As a heritage resource consultant, I specialize in heritage interpretation, and I work to push people to move beyond the standard walking tour and to consider new strategies or unconventional strategies for storytelling. So for storytelling, I recommend everybody to start with a broad concept. This could be urbanism, your town, historic preservation, or this year with the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, women's equality. So think about a broad concept, and then we will start to hone in on our specific interest tied to that concept. And I'm saying your specific interest because I want this to be something that really sparks an excitement, a twinkle in your eye, fireworks, that first kiss moment, that kind of passion about your interest. So for urbanism, maybe it ties to transit because you're into the walkability of an area. Your town, it's the hidden histories. For historic preservation, buildings that deserve to be preserved. Or for women's equality, the activism tied to it, women finding their voice. Apparently I skipped step 3, but what are you trying to say tied to that concept? So for urbanism, we're going down to transit, and then we're going to show how you can travel around town on bike. So we're really trying to start big and then work our way small to help us figure out what specific narrative we're trying to tell. Hidden histories, our specific goal tied to that is helping people see that your town has interesting stories beyond what is known. For example, when thinking about an event, during the Rust Belt takeover of Philadelphia last year, we wanted to showcase any type of history that was not associated with the colonists. We wanted to go beyond the Liberty Bell and show the hidden histories that people may not typically associate with the city, helping expand the narrative. For historic preservation, buildings that deserve to be preserved, and showcasing specific buildings. So this could be, your endangered buildings list. That's a fairly familiar strategy in the preservation world. So let's showcase some specific buildings that are typed actively or passively being threatened. Or for women's equality, it's the activism component, and then the imagery associated with the movement, for example, the banners. And behind me, you'll see I have some of my versions of the banners. So we're going to start by figuring out what other people have said about the topic, because we want you to have a fresh take on it. It's fine to regurgitate, but that's not necessarily exciting, and we want to see the topic from your perspective, because you have a unique perspective that's different from anybody else in existence. So let's hear your specific voice, because when you're communicating from your perspective, that's really when your writing or your imagery is truly going to shine, because it's going to show your passion associated with the topic. And even if it's just in a zine, your passion is going to translate into somebody else and get them excited. So I'm really passionate about telling the story of women's equality this year, because the 19th Amendment, it gave women the right to vote, but not all women could vote. Not all women could vote actually until the 1970s. That's after the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's because Indigenous women still could not vote based on a case-by-case basis of state legislation. So I think it's really powerful to communicate women's equality movement with the imagery associated with the banners, because we talk about preserving the traditional trades all the time, but we're not typically talking about women's traditional trades like sewing. So it's a great way to have a multi-layered way to tell the stories. Sorry, I think my internet's up. So I research the history of banners, and I find fun quips like "mother is the best but not good enough to vote." You find information about the colors associated with it. You find archival images. You start to dig deep to find what types of stories have been associated with this movement. I found not a ton of information has been tied to the women's iconography. And then you empower people to connect it to topics of today. You know, that's the best way to truly tell a story. Help find ways to connect it to people and their personal experiences. So you should think about, you know, your story. How does it connect to a contemporary lens? In this case, my new banner connected to the older one, but it says women are not good enough to elect, because statistically only 25% of people in Congress today are women. That's not an equal representation of women and men in existence today. So how does crafting banners connect to a zine? You know, I want us to think about how we tell our stories, whether it's a walking tour, online content, or other ways, and how you can reframe it and adjust it into zines or other additional content. Because people learn in a wide range of strategies. Not everybody wants to sit in a lecture like you all you wonderful people. Not everybody wants to come to an in-person event because maybe they don't feel welcome there. Nobody else has published something on this perspective. So I want to be the person who creates a zine on the banners and the visuals associated with the suffrage movement. And people need things at different prices, and zines are a really great low-cost opportunity to create inclusion. So I want to tell the story of suffrage through a zine because, again, not everybody can come to my in-person workshops when those are in existence. Not everybody can or wants to come to a virtual workshop. So how do I want to visually communicate it? How do I want to empower people to create their own banners to advocate for things they believe in today or pay an homage to the past? So my zine that I'm working on right now is going to have some hands-on activities, some stencils that people can print out and cut out at home to help them shape their own zines. But I'm also going to provide some information about the history of the movement. And Namita, who's our next speaker, is going to delve into really how you can physically create a zine. But I'm going to mention that I'm using a virtual tool. I'm using Procreate, which is a great digital app that you can download on your iPad and your iPhone. It does cost $5, but it's a really great alternative to doing Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop because you can edit images in it, you can color adjust, you can do drawings, you can really help create some nice digital visuals. And if you follow me on social media, a lot of the stuff that I create is through Procreate. So I highly recommend that as a low-cost entry point if you want to consider digital, and I'd be happy to talk about that more when we do the breakout groups. But we're going to move on to Namita, who's going to help you think through how you want to physically create your zine, and hopefully those storytelling tips can help you along the way.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Namita. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about how to physically create your zine. Bear with me because apparently my system preferences are not letting me share my screen. There we go. All right, can you see my screen? Yes, no, yes, great. All right, so, like I said, my name is Namita, she, her, hers pronouns. I'm the visual arts librarian at Smith College here in Northampton, Massachusetts. The way that I got into creating zines was I found it to be a really accessible, hands-on way in order to teach my students of all art liaison areas. It seemed to be a much better way to connect with my students, to create these fun visual prompts so that they could color in zines, they could write down their answers to questions that I asked within our seminars. And so I really got started with just creating them based on whatever topic that I was covering within my sessions when I was teaching classes as a librarian in my current profession. So that's kind of how I got started with making zines. So I wanted to start off with a quick poll. If you use your browser and go to this link that's at the very top, pollev.com/myname173, or you can text 22333, and you can engage within our poll today. So have you ever made a zine before? A for no, B for yes, but I'd like to build my skill, and C, you're a zine pro, but you're excited to make more today. All right, I'll give you one more minute. If you can't figure it out, that's totally fine. All right, so it looks like we're pretty even in our participants who've never made one before, some who have, but they like to build their skill, and we've got a few zine pros with us who are excited to make more. So for today, we've got a few prompts for our zine that we're making. So you don't have to follow these prompts necessarily, but we thought we would offer a few that you could use in order to create yours. So the first one is how I became a preservationist. Second one is recipe for historic preservation. And the third one is my dream historic house. We have a few hashtags to suggest as well. So after you've made some, or while you're working today along with your progress, if you wanted to share on social media, either on Twitter or Instagram, you can use hashtag #WindowZine, hashtag #Quarantine, and hashtag #ThisPlaceMatters to highlight the fact that May is Preservation Month. So you will have gotten the prep list from for today's workshop. And I have a little link here for you in case you want to open that right now. It's bit.ly/indozine. And this will guide you through a few resources for if you wanted to print out any particular images that are free within fair use in the public commons, a list of our supplies that you need for today, and then other resources and further reading. If you wanted to engage in some of these, it includes an overview of Introduction to Zines and a few really helpful websites that'll help you with your zine making. We also have another reminder at the bottom to submit your zine or piece to Windows and the hashtag. So that'll help you today follow along with our zine making. So I'm going to stop sharing and show you physically how to start folding your zines. So there are two types of main zines to be working with hands-on. One of them is your basic half-folded paper. So depending on how long you want your zine to be, all you have to do is fold it in half this way, and you can add as many insert sheets as you want. into here. Easy peasy, right? And before you staple in the middle in order to secure your pages, I really like to make sure that I am laying out everything that I want, doodling, filling it out with my images and my colors as much as possible. And then when I'm done is when I like to staple it in the middle in order to secure it closed. So that's one of the zines that you could make today if you choose to. The other one is a mini zine. So in order to do that, it seems really tricky, but it's definitely not. I promise we can all do it together. So if you take your 8x11 sheet paper that you have right now, all you have to do is fold it once lengthwise. And there are a few ways to fold it, but I'll show you my favorite way to do it. So once this way, then fold it in half. So it looks like this before. We're gonna fold it in half like this. And then you're just gonna fold it one more time. Like this. So once you've got that, you essentially images first. I really like. So for example, I've got my cover here. So I wrote 1 on the bottom. So it goes cover, then first page, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and your back cover right here. So once you start, this really helps me so that I know how to lay out everything and plan out exactly what I want to draw. Of course, I always use pencil to begin with because inevitably we make mistakes, right? It's all part of the process. So I do that. Sometimes I like to use little Post-it notes or sticky notes to lay out what I think I want to use or put onto each paper like that. So then after you have laid everything out, what you want to do is fold it back in half, like so. So if it looks like this, you want to fold it in half here. And then what you want to do is you want to cut it right along this edge here. Not past here, but just right here. So we're going to do that. You should have a little gap right in the middle, right through here. And after you've done that, fold it back out like this. Fold it in half lengthwise. And then what's going to happen is you're going to bring it together like this and then fold it flat. So what you'll see when you fold it is all your individual pages. Like so. And you've constructed your zine. So that's how you do it. It's very, very easy. It looks very tricky, but I promise you it's not. I used the My Dream Historic House prompt to just quickly doodle all of my ideas here. Mine says, kind of lays out all the things that I love about particular historic homes. I love a transom door. I love brackets. I love a Spanish colonial revival, somewhere warm. But putting them all together would look pretty silly as a one house. So I'll just keep dreaming about my dream historic house. So that's just an example of using some of the prompts that we laid out today. So things that I like to use in order to doodle, like I said, or I mentioned, pencil first, always nice, because if you make mistakes, you can always erase them. And then I really like going over it with a thin Sharpie pen if I'm doodling. It's really helpful to outline with a thicker marker, and it turns out it has a nice shading and a nice outline afterward as well. And of course, you can use markers to color things in as you'd like. So pretty easy, but that's how you construct your zine. Going back to our presentation, let's talk about breakout rooms for a second. So we're going to put you into breakout rooms. What's going to happen is you're going to get a prompt saying that you are being put into a certain number of room with other people, of your fellow attendees. So what we'd like you to do for the rest of this time while we're in the workshop, introduce yourself to your fellow attendees, share with one another your motivations for attending today's webinar and your zine ideas, and then let's all create together. We moderators will be dropping into each breakout room to see your progress, give tips, and answer questions. And then we'll all come back together towards the end of the hour so that we can recap together and talk about any of your experiences while you've been creating, any questions that you have to share, or just things that you'd like to share with your experiences making zines.
Before we switch to breakout rooms, I'd really just like to reinforce that this is something to consider being added to your preservation toolkit. So, you know, like we all have a National Register nomination lying around, but a normal person, or we're all normal here, but you know, like most typical person doesn't want to read a National Register. So maybe this is a fun way to reinterpret the research that you already have. Or maybe it's a fun way to create that self-guided tour that's been on your back burner. Or you're looking for new ways to connect to high schoolers or different K through 12 people that visit your historic site. Because a lot of programs are trying to teach their youth how to research with primary sources. So it really can be a fun way to empower youth or anybody to have a voice or to come up with a low-cost opportunity to use the information you already have researched in a different format that might be more accessible to people than, let's say, a virtual tour or something. You know, it's just a different lens to expand your audience or maybe engage people in a new way.
So before we break out into rooms, does anybody have any questions? You can either raise your hand in the participants button at the bottom. You can place it directly into the chat box. And leave a few minutes for questions before we break out into rooms.
What would you guys say is a good trick to kind of get going if there's a prompt, but how do you translate that into something? What tips would you have for people to just kind of get the ball rolling?
That's a great question. So I think about it in storytelling formation. So when I mentioned before about laying out exactly which page is where, I like to kind of sketch a few keywords or maybe doodles so that I can create a storyline all the way through from beginning to end. That really helps me when it comes to a prompt. Like today is my dream historic house. I really just thought, what are some characteristics of historic houses that I really like? And I just started doodling and adding text around it. And yeah, it's really easy to get started that way.
I'm really visually driven. So if I'm doing the dream historic home prompt, then I potentially would want to look through my phone's photo feed and be like, okay, what are the type of houses that I've been taking pictures of? And like, am I seeing any consistent threads in there? Am I taking a ton of photos of bungalows, for example? You know, what kind of things have I, and then that's also really helpful because it starts to help you see what type of data you've already collected or imagery you've already collected that you may want to print out and integrate into your zine or otherwise. So I'm like a Pinterest board style storyteller. I want to try and create it and then start to then hone in on what are the things that I'm consistently seeing? Is it a specific style? Is it a specific feature? And then that can help shape the story, once I'm like, okay, this is what keeps popping out, this is the type of story I should be telling because it's clearly repetitious and already ingrained in my brain. But I mean, I think also, like, once one of you like looks up the past window zines, which are free for download online, like, I think it's also sometimes good just to see how other people have done them, just to kick you in the tush initially.
Right, yeah, look at inspiration. Also, just jump in, because your first one may not be your best. That's okay. The next one will be easier. You'll get more ideas through starting the process.
And if you're using materials and images either from online digital collections, like the links that we sent through the prep list, or if you have your own scrap images in newspapers or magazines or something, I always like finding really visual ones, things that really jump out to me, or things that I think are going to work really well with a prompt, cutting those out and then just kind of placing them around my pages, and then using a glue stick to glue them down, and then doodling around them, adding text, whatever it might be. So that's another easy way to get started as well.
Great.